Welcome to Season 2 of Difference Talks, brought to you by the LeBeau Marketing, Communications, and Training Team. Our guests are inspiring people who share their stories of brand differentiation. Based on our book, The Power of Differentiation, our goal is to inspire 1 million people with the message that winning hearts and minds are the first step in growing market share. Now, on with the show.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Difference Talks. I'm Barry LeBeau. I am CEO and founder of LeBeau Marketing, Communications, and Training, and the author of The Power of Differentiation. Today, we have Jason Freier, Hardball Capital leader. He invests, he and his team own minor league baseball teams. It's fascinating. It is a very, very up and coming area of sports and community development. So I'm going to turn it to you, Jason. Why don't you give a little background, and then we're going to go in, and I want to really have you educate our audience on what is going on in minor league baseball. So a little bit about you, if you could.
Sure. I am a kid who was born in Brooklyn and raised in Queens, New York, to two longtime public school teachers. My parents taught a total of about, almost 80 years in the New York City public school system. Became a lawyer by training, practiced law for about 10 years, but then had this opportunity to get into minor league baseball. And as a kid who had grown up, when we got tickets to baseball games when I was young, my parents got tickets through their union, and we were sitting, in the last row of the upper deck, and the players, as far as I could tell, were about 3 inches tall. When I first got exposure to minor league baseball, I said, God, these are better than the best seats I've ever sat in. And I'm paying, $6 or $7 to sit there in the 1990s. And I said, this is just a great product. So I sort of made a plan to get out of being an attorney and to get into minor league baseball. It took me about 5 years, but in 2006, we started with the team there in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that's what I've been doing with myself the last almost 20 years.
And you are humble. You come from modest backgrounds. Your degree is from Yale and Harvard. You have an acumen that's been well documented in business, a very tough negotiator, very fair negotiator. I'd like you to share with our audience the seismic shift that has happened in minor league baseball. And I'll tee it up a little bit and just say 20, 30 years ago, owning a minor league baseball team might not have been a point of pride for many of those owners, number one. Number two, and this is another area where you differentiated yourself, many of those teams were run by organizations that had problems, let's just say, paying their bills sometimes. They were not necessarily the best citizens. You and a handful of others have differentiated this entire business segment. So share with us what happened and how you are running, owning, and investing in these teams.
Sure. Well, yeah, going back, you probably have to go back at this point about 35 years to where minor league baseball was what people sort of traditionally thought of it as, which is what you would see if you watch, the old Bull Durham movie, right? Stadiums were little more than a bunch of seats around a field. Sometimes what passed for concessions was hot dog carts and things like that. It was an extraordinarily basic setup. And what that meant is there wasn't a great experience. Not a lot of people were going. And the only people who went were the hardcore baseball fans. And if you were a hardcore baseball fan, this was great. You got to see the stars of tomorrow, today, and all that. But the number of people that were that hardcore was just small enough that the business couldn't have that kind of a very significant impact. In the 1990s, Major League Baseball forced upon minor league baseball a series of stadium standards. They wanted to raise the level of these stadiums for what were basically glorified high school fields And part of the reason was they were starting to have to pay more in signing bonuses to players they drafted and things like this. And they said, we're investing money in the players. We need the place they play to rise to that level as well. And this forced the minor league teams and the cities that they were in to say, if we want to retain minor league baseball, what we need to do is we need to raise the level here. And minor league baseball stadiums went over the course of about 30 years, and it was an evolution in steps, but went from being these sort of glorified high school baseball fields to being every bit as nice as the major league stadiums, just on a smaller scale. And that transition opened up a bunch of different things, right? With the games itself, what it opened up was minor league baseball games were no longer just a place to go if you were a diehard fan to see the stars of tomorrow. It became a great experience. It became a way to be close to a game in the action, but to be sitting in a beautiful setting, to have, over time, lots of this social seating has evolved where games have become very much a social experience. The second thing is, as the ballparks became something that more was invested in, that created a reason to say, hey, if we're investing this much money into a facility, we should find a way to use it, not just for, 70 baseball games a year. We should find a way to use it the other 280 plus days a year so that we can really get something out of this significant investment. And that's opened up, an entirely new world. These facilities have become 365-day-a-year facilities, none more so than Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne still hosts more events than any other minor league ballpark in the country. And then the third thing that happened is, once you start getting these larger crowds, and once you start making the venue something that hosts events year-round and is drawing traffic year-round, the venue really now becomes an economic catalyst. It becomes something that changes downtowns. It becomes something that retail, residential, hotel, office all wants to be near. So, the transition of minor league baseball has been in these steps, and it's turned it into something very different than it was back, in, let's call it, the early 1990s.
Let's go into one area, because our audience is going to hear, after we take break, how you have transformed communities. But before we get to that, let's talk about, I love this, by the way, the difference in minor league baseball and major league baseball. And a minor league baseball executive turned to me once and said this. He said, well, Barry, it's the difference between outcome and experience. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, Major League Baseball, you want your team to win. You're rooting them on. And if they lose, I don't care how good the hot dogs were. I don't care what went. You're walking away and you're a little glum. You're not feeling great. Minor League Baseball today, thanks to you and others in your field, but you led the way, is all about the experience. You go to the game. As you said, you don't have to be a diehard fan of baseball. You can go to the game with your family, your friends, and be entertained, not just with the baseball, but every inning, top and bottom of the inning, there's something going on. There's something fun going on. And literally to the point where you could stay for the fireworks display, walk out, and somebody could say, okay, what was the score? And you might go, I don't know. Or what did your favorite player hit? What was his box score? I don't know. It's because you have created something completely different than Major League Baseball. What was the genesis of this? And explain to everybody how you have gone down this path of experience, which is extraordinary. And it separates you. It's a differentiator from Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I mean, they say necessity is the mother of an invention, right? I mean, when you are a minor league team, you may have the greatest player in the world on the field at that moment, but nobody knows it. Nobody knows who our players are. A very small, now with the internet, it's a little different than when we started. Now people have a little bit better knowledge. There's a core group of people, but most people who come to the game have never heard of any of the players. Quick story, when we had the All-Star game there in Fort Wayne in 2009, the Midwest League All-Star game, and we were trying to decide who should be in the home run derby. The last guy we cut from the home run derby was a guy that we cut because he was hitting about 360. He was leading the league in hitting. He was a great hitter, but he seemed more like a slap leadoff hitter. We didn't really know if he would be interesting to watch in a home run derby. Didn't seem to have much power.
Right.
So, we missed the opportunity to have Mike Trout in our home run derby. Right. So even the people involved don't necessarily know how great these guys are or are going to be. And with that, the other thing about it is, if we have a hot prospect, by the time we get a billboard up advertising that he, come see this guy, he could already have been promoted a level.
Right.
So we don't have the ability to promote the players the way a major league team does. And what that means is you say to yourself, okay, we've got to give people another reason to come out here. We've got to make this a place they're happy to come, even if the guy that they wanted to see when they bought the ticket 2 weeks ago got promoted yesterday. So that's sort of the genesis of it. Is we knew we have to do something different because we can't get people in the same way. They're never going to care about whether or not we win the same way they do about the major league team. Now, that being said, as you emphasize the difference between us and say the major league sports, I would say the funny thing is that difference, has shrunk over time. And the reason it has is because the minor league teams have been so successful with this other, the between innings entertainment and with the kind of, what we describe as social seating. In Fort Wayne, we call it neighborhoods that we've built around the ballpark, but different kinds of seating where people can go to the ballpark and socialize even more than they're watching the game. If you go to any major league ballpark now, between innings, you will see the same sort of stuff that we have been doing for 20 or 30 years. The biggest thing here in Atlanta with the Braves for a while was they had a race the freeze. They had a guy who was like an Olympic level sprinter, and they would pick somebody out of the crowd. They would let them run, 3/4 of the way around the warning track, and this guy would still beat them to the end. Like he'd wait as long as he thought he could to beat them, but it was incredible, and it was on all over social media and all of that sort of thing. And you go to any of these major league ballparks, and you will see the kind of social seating that we have built in Fort Wayne and that now exists in other minor league ballparks as well. So even the major league folks, and the same thing is true, quite frankly, also, if you go to, football, if you go to basketball arenas, there are so many more social areas now. It used to be, it was either stadium seats or it was suites. Those were your two options. That's not the case at any major sport now anymore. They have the options that we have as well.
Can you share some of the more interesting, maybe more entertaining, and perhaps some that didn't quite work out like you expected when you first created them? Some of those experiences, some of the characters, or some of the races or things that have been put on?
When we first bought the team in Savannah, Georgia, we wanted to announce that we were in town. No one was going to watch the games there. The ballpark was empty before we got there. So one of the things we did is we got a guy who was a stunt guy who was in big time movies and things like that. And he wanted to have the Guinness record for longest run while on fire. And so this is a guy where we chose a fan at the end of the game who got to light this guy on fire. He had on a suit and this gel and whatever. We had pre-soaked a set of bases in gasoline and also run gasoline along the baseline. So as this guy started running at home plate, he runs up the first baseline, trailing fire behind him, hits the base. The base goes boom on fire, makes it all the way on the 3 bases, slides head first into home. And, a couple of guys there go with a fire extinguisher to spray, and the umpire steps in and says, "You're out." So again, that got a lot of attention. We have things like, the human cannonball, where this guy will shoot himself, 3/4 of the way across the field out of a cannon and land in a net, right? So there are the really out there things like that. And then, an awful lot of it is just about getting people onto the field, whether it's kids run the bases after the game, or whether it's, we have a Build-A-Burger contest where kids get into various part of a burger outfit or the different pieces of a burger. We have outfits, and we we get them greased up so it's hard for them to pile up as a burger. But again, one of the unique things about our experience opposed to the major leagues is when you come to the game with your family, your kids may end up on the field in front of everybody doing something fun that day.
See, this is a perfect example of differentiating, because there's no reason, if I'm in at that point, let's say Savannah, there's no reason to go to the game. At that point, the stadium was beat up and old. Nobody's going to it. Who cares? But now there's this guy that's going to light himself on fire. And I got to go see this guy, because I don't know if he's going to implode or what. What you're talking about is a brilliant way to make your product far more than watching 9 people on both sides of the ball. It's a way to make your product engaging. And as you said, you're bringing in the audience. They're part of it. They're lighting the guy on fire. They're running the bases. It's really fantastic. And it explains why your success has been so great. When we come back from break, I want everybody to listen to this closely, because not only is it lighting somebody on fire and having fun, but it also will transform communities. We'll be right back on Difference Talks.
Difference Talks is a LaBeouf production. Our focus is differentiation, and we believe it's more important than ever to differentiate your brand and experience. Contact us at LaBeouf.com for a conversation. We'd love to connect with you.
Welcome back to Difference Talks. I am with Jason Freier, Hardball Capital leader. We've been talking minor league baseball, some fun things about the experience that you're just not going to get anywhere else, that draws you into the brand. Jason, let's dial in a little more on a different topic that I've talked about prior, which is transforming the community. From a distance, the average consumer or citizen will look at, oh, gee, they're going to build a stadium. That's a lot of money. Oh, they'll tear down some things downtown. Uh-oh, wow, what are they doing? But this concept that you have brought to numerous cities has absolutely changed those cities. And it's been literally a magnet for investment in each of them. Please share the story behind that.
Yeah, so Fort Wayne was our first project, and that has really been the template we've used elsewhere. As you know, Fort Wayne was a town that had a declining population. Entire Allen County had a declining population, but the downtown even more so. The people were leaving Allen County in general, but the people who were within Allen County were leaving downtown to go to other parts of the county.
You're absolutely right.
So the downtown was really struggling and was, needed a reason for people to start coming back downtown. And, the first step in creating a vibrant downtown is giving people a reason to come. If you can start creating reasons for people to come and foot traffic and things like that, good things will happen. So when we built Parkview Field, we were drawing 400,000 people a year for baseball games, but also, very importantly, we were doing all sorts of other events that are drawing another 150,000 people a year at least downtown for these other events. And the combination of the fact that you had all of this foot traffic and that Parkview Field, was such an attractive place visually meant that, immediately we saw development right around Parkview Field. The Harrison, which is in left field, apartments where you can catch a home run on your terrace, where your view is of this beautiful ballpark. The same thing with the 2 hotels in center. Once you get that additional development, now it's created even more vibrancy, and that snowballs. We've seen well over $1 billion invested in downtown Fort Wayne, but all of this starts with bringing people back downtown. And as you know, the land that was right around the ballpark before we built it was surface parking lots, or quite honestly, things you would have wished were surface parking lots. There were crack houses, there was a liquor store, just not a lot of attractive things. So we've we've taken away the blight and turned it into something that attracts people. And we found that's a formula that's worked for us in other places. It's worked tremendously well in Columbia, South Carolina. We're getting started on a project right now in Chattanooga, Tennessee, but it's also a project that's worked for other people as well. We can point to easily another half dozen ballparks in places like Durham, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, that have had similar impacts.
One thing that I want you to talk about is this. It is an assumption that, okay, there's this big multi-million-dollar ballpark, and maybe 75 times a year there will be a game there during really nice weather. Otherwise, most of the time, the assumption is it's sitting empty. You have revolutionized the concept of the stadium, the ballpark being a unique differentiator that can then be used. Please go into a little depth with that.
Yeah, sure. So we think of these as community venues, and our goal is to have something going on as frequently as we can. Whether it's concerts, comedy shows. Last year, not this past season, but this past season, we had Home Run Derby X. We were one of only 4 places in the country MLB decided to debut this new concept, right? We have Fork for Fitness. We bring in over a weekend about 20,000 people between the race, the people watching the race, and the health fest we do alongside our naming rights partner, Parkview Health. But we also, our suite level is used as a place that hosts holiday parties, business meetings, Rotary clubs, all of that year round. This past year, we debuted our holiday lights. We had over 1 million lights. They're synchronized to holiday music. We have a lot of entertainment that goes on around that. We have everything from a train kids can ride around the concourse. We have a Santa's workshop where they can build toys. We have, fire pits and s'mores, but it's, a great way for families to get out during a time of year when they're in the holiday spirit. It's inexpensive. And, we did that for the first time this year and had over 98,000 people come through our venue between mid-November and New Year's.
Most of us are not going outside during that time. Most of us are getting a little bit of cabin fever. So you provided something for us to enjoy.
One of the things that's been great about Parkview Field is, it is open to the public when it's not in use. So if we don't have a game, those gates are open dawn till dusk. You can go just walk around the concourse. We have people who work downtown who will come and sit at the picnic tables to have lunch outside when it's, we have a nice spring day or summer day. So the goal has really been to make this something that is used by the community as much as possible. And, that's a win on both fronts, right? This was a public-private partnership to build this ballpark. So we feel like, it is a commitment we made and the city made to make sure that this really was a community venue. But also for us, when we think about a lot of the events that we do are loss leaders, quite frankly, because, if I can do 2 things with money, our marketing budget, I can take out an ad in a newspaper or on TV, or I can put on a great event and get people into our ballpark and let them have a good time. The second one is going to be a much more effective marketing tool for us. It engenders much more loyalty and all of that than putting the ads in the newspaper, right? So for us, we did commit to making this a community venue, and it's the right thing to do, but it's also good for our business.
Right. You're making it a win-win because it's not just a charitable thing you're doing. You are profitable. Your business has been highly successful. You're doing something that's tougher, but more sustainable.
One of the other things that we have done over the years that has been a key to the success in Fort Wayne is we reinvest a large chunk of the profits that are made right back into that ballpark, which is a publicly owned ballpark, right? So, we have done everything from, small things like building our concourse suites and things like that to huge projects. We built the 400 Club and then the Summit, which is the rooftop deck on top of that. That was all built with private dollars. The second we build it, it's owned by the public. right? But we invested, well into seven figures in that. But that's helped us keep the ballpark fresh, and it's helped make it continue to make it a great experience. So your point is exactly right. If we're profitable, we can reinvest in the business, and that allows the business to stay profitable, which allows us to, again, reinvest in the business. So you have this sort of virtuous cycle.
There's a lot of activity today with private equity firms buying up minor league baseball teams. What do you see as the future? What is going to go down this road, and what are we going to see in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, so Major League Baseball restructured the minor leagues coming out of COVID. So starting with the 2021 season, which was a shortened season, and they did some things that we were not fond of. One of the things they did was they got rid of or stopped providing affiliated baseball in 43 markets. But they also changed rules. There used to be rules that you could only own one team in a league and things like this. So one of the things that restructuring did is it created an easier platform for a private equity firm to come in. And there is a large firm, a firm called Diamond Baseball Holdings, which is backed by Silver Lake, which is one of the biggest and most successful private equity firms in the country. They have come in and they have now bought up, today, it's hard to keep track, but I think they're up to 41 minor league teams. That has been a sea change. There had never, the most teams anybody had ever owned before. There was a group called Mandalay back in the, let's call it around 2010 or 12 or so. They might have gotten up to 7 teams at one point. And really there was nobody else with more than 5 ever. So this is an enormous change. And a lot of it has been recent. It's been just the last couple of years. So the jury is still out on what the impact will be on minor league baseball. What does it mean to have somebody own a third of the teams? On the plus side, I think they're very sophisticated, very smart folks. They're bringing a lot of professionalism to their teams. They have a lot of resources and are investing in their teams. All that's great. On the other side, you and I talked earlier about sort of all the unique things that happen in minor league baseball. Right. And part of you worries that, if you start having this owned in a larger and more corporate way, do those teams have the same ability to do, and will they continue to create these unique experiences? And you also wonder whether they're going to have the same commitment to their local communities that our teams do. I have spent a good chunk of my life in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and in Columbia, South Carolina, and now in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I spent more days in Fort Wayne than I did at home during the time that we were, designing and building Parkview Field. I know the people there. This matters to me. When you have a large company with, hundreds of employees that owns 41 teams, it just can't matter the same way to them. It's not personal. And so, I worry a little bit that some of these things could erode the specialness of minor league baseball in some of these markets.
I agree with you. I really hope that it would not erode the focus on the community and the impact that you have brought, because that's the most important differentiator that I have seen. Jason, if you look at what you're doing and one of your normal days you work, et cetera, let's say there's a special day where you're done working and you're more energized than ever. We call that a best day. It's a day where you go, okay, this is great. Now you may have worked really hard. You may have been up early, whatever. What is a best day for you?
One of the great things about this business for me has been that, what I'm doing changes so much. Right now I am neck deep in, we've got a stadium that's coming out of the ground in Chattanooga. So we're focused on things like, finalizing the design, picking all the details around the ballpark, but also selling our naming rights and selling our suites and things like that. That's something you only do. I've done that. This is my third time through because we did it with Parkview Field. We did it with Segra Park in Columbia. And now we're doing it in Chattanooga. During other stretches of time, I am more focused on, aspects of the operation. When we don't have anything huge going on and I come to a game in Fort Wayne, I'll sit there with my pad and I'll take pages of notes and I'll give them to Mike Nutter and his team in Fort Wayne and say, hey, here's what I saw. Here are the things I loved. Here are the things that I didn't think went as well. Just get to sit at a game as a fan. Probably my all-time favorite part, though, is when we open the ballparks, right? Because what I have found, and this was the case with Parkview Field probably more than any other ballpark, the difference between what people expect and what we're able to deliver is enormous. I love just standing by the gates as people are coming up for the first time and then standing around on the concourse as people are milling about and talking about it as they've come through for the first time. And the amazing thing is that'll last for like a year or so, because you will have lots of people who never thought they would be going to a minor league baseball game, but now they've heard from so many people how great this is. They're like, I got to go check this out and see what it is. So it might be the start of year 2 and they're coming to Parkview Field for the first time. But that's, seeing sort of that wow look on people's eyes where you've exceeded expectations and you've now established yourself with that person. That's probably those are the single best days, right? So I've had that in Fort Wayne. I had it in Columbia. And, that's really what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to, mid-April 2026 in Chattanooga when people say, God, I knew you guys were going to build something better than what we had, but I could never have imagined it would be this.
We call that at our company going from why to wow. They're going, why did they spend all this money? Why did they go through all this? And then you experience it and you go, wow. And there's no doubt with Chattanooga, you're going to have another wow. Jason, I want to thank you in several different ways. Fort Wayne, Indiana is my home. I reached out to you independently of that because we're involved in another organization. And you graciously said, yeah, let's get together. I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for having the ownership of Fort Wayne, Chattanooga, Columbia as topmost in your mind, with the business smarts of, hey, we want to be profitable so we can invest back in because it helps the community. You're creating unique experiences at the ballparks, no doubt about it. You're inviting hundreds of thousands of people a year in each of those cities. But just as important, and this is where you are unique and distinctive, is you are inspiring people within those communities to invest, to believe even more, which is the most important thing. So thank you today. I want everybody to pay attention to minor league baseball. Check out the award-winning stadium in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Check out Columbia. Check out Chattanooga in 2026. Jason, thank you for your time today.
Well, thanks for the kind words, Barry, and it was fun.
It was fun. Everybody, thank you for watching and or listening to Difference Talks.
Thank you for joining us on Difference Talks. All of us at LeBeau are proud to celebrate great people with inspiring messages. Difference Talks was created, produced, engineered, and performed by the LeBeau team. Even the music is original. Contact us at LeBeau.com to learn how to differentiate your brand and give your team a sense of significance and meaning.